Hey guys, what's going on? It's Livid. Hope you're all doing very well today. I just wanted to apologize that this video has taken me so long to upload. To be completely honest, I've changed direction on it a couple times. I'm hoping this is my final take. I've decided not to do a tier list. I just think that it's not fair to compare the exotics to each other. Instead, I'm going to just cover them briefly, and then I will explain whether I think it's worth keeping or scrapping. I'm going to try and keep it really simple. We'll talk about the bonus and the bonuses that they have and what they do. And I will just kind of give you guys my opinion on whether it's worth keeping or scrapping. You guys can keep discussing in the comments if you'd like, if you have a different opinion than me. This is just my list. You guys have like all asked me at one point or another which exotics you guys should be keeping, and this is where I would put them on that list. So we're going to start off with the SMGs, mainly because that's just what I have in my inventory at the time. So with the Hilder and Air, these are really niche guns, mainly because it requires both of the guns to be equipped to your primary and secondary slot in order to obtain any benefit from the talent. And the talent is a set bonus. Basically, every hit that you land with the Hilder increases your critical hit damage with the Air, and it decreases by 1 every second. And this only applies to the Air. So this goes back to what I was saying. Both of them are basically required in order to obtain any benefit. Now, the thing about SMGs is that they have an in-class bonus of critical hit chance, so you want to capitalize on as much critical hit damage as you can. The crappy thing about these is that they are SMG 9s, and you are missing out on a foregrip attachment slot, which has a really high potential for critical hit damage, which is 19% maximum. However, you are getting 30% from the actual bonus. So you have the potential to get like 11% more critical hit damage than any other SMG. However, just for the fact that you have to maintain this bonus, it makes it not very fun to utilize or try to maintain. I actually think the stats on these guns are fine. If you get these, especially if you get the pair, like earlier on when you're leveling up, I would say to use them. But once you get better SMGs, like a Navy MP5 with good talents, even an AUG with good talents, especially once you get the house, even the house with bad talents will pretty much overthrow these on any given day. So I would say starting out, these are fine, but after you get the commendations and stuff that you need for exotics, and after you get like better SMGs, these are an instant scrap. For me, at the current state that I'm in with the game, I don't keep these, I just instantly scrap them. I only have them for the sake of this video. The next guns we're going to talk about them together because they have the same exact exotic talent, which is the Thompson and the Tommy gun. Fun fact, the Thompson actually has the highest base damage out of any of the automatic SMGs. The only SMG that has a higher base damage than this is the Burstfire MP5, but the MP5, or the Burstfire obviously is burst, so it has an RPM cap. But the Thompson does have the highest actual base damage out of any SMG in the game. I believe it also has the smallest magazine. The exotic talent is very underwhelming, strictly for the fact that they nerfed hipfire pretty, I would say like mid to like late way through the game. I wouldn't waste your guys' time. Once you guys get the exotic commendations that you need, these are an instant scrap. There's really nothing else to say about it. You can use them at first if you just want to have some fun, or later on in the game if you're wanting to meme, but these are instant scrap for me. The next one we're going to talk about is the Midas. Now, the Midas is a bit of a unique SMG for sure. Each bullet that you hit reduces your damage and your target's damage by 1% to a max of 20. The effect is reduced by 5% per second. I would say the biggest downfall of this is the fact that you lose 5% every second. You're literally, in 4 seconds, you lose the entire bonus. So it's really unfortunate. I would have wished that they would have made this at least like one per second instead of 5. That's kind of insane, especially because it only goes up to 20. There are very rare scenarios where this is actually useful. The biggest one that I've seen people use it with is on pretty much any kind of healer build. So if you're using Reclaimer, you could throw this on. Any kind of support build, like any kind of healer, a tactician support build, a final measure healer. I've also seen people use this sometimes on defense builds because you're primarily there to tank. You're not really there to do damage. So the Midas is actually pretty decent because you're going to be up in their face. You'll actually be able to land shots with this. I can't say I've ever seen people use it in PvP. I can't really say that it works all that well. One thing that I did test, and I will let you guys know, is that the Midas talent does affect your skills. So I would not use this with a tactician like BFB, like sticky bomb cluster mine build, because this will lower the damage of your skills as well. So it's not worth using for that kind of build. I would only use this for like a support or a healer, like a tank, something like that. Otherwise, this is not useful. So if those kind of builds aren't really your thing, if you're more of like a run and gun, or you like doing like real damage output, I would say this is an instant scrap. The last SMG we're going to cover is the House. The House is arguably the absolute best exotic in the game. It's like the most heavily anticipated exotic when it released in 1.8. Not only is the gun itself, like the stats really good, damage, RPM is all good. This is the same rate of fire as the lightweight M4. Damage is really good. Not only is all of this really good, but the talent itself is one of the best damage dealing talents in the game, and you can make it work for pretty much all builds. So the House is an instant keep for me. But we're going to move into assault rifles, and we're going to start off with the Urban MDR. The Urban is very versatile, and its exotic talent is called Distracted. Your damage is increased by 18% against targets with status effects. Distracted actually works with your skills as well. So this gun is highly favored with Firecrest builds, as well as Tactician builds, and really good to use with Sentry, as well as Predator's Mark. So already, the Urban MDR has a place for a lot of different builds. So the Urban is an instant keep for me. I usually look for talents like Vicious and Deadly for Predator. Accurate's a really good talent to have on it in general. Destructive, Brutal works very well with it for Sentry because it's an assault rifle, which means that it doesn't have the headshot damage bonus from an MMR. So headshot damage is going to pair very well with all the bonuses that it comes with. You'll also want to look for like Destructive. Prepared is also a really good one. The Urban is just all around really solid gun. The Bullfrog is next. Bullfrog, I think it's one of like the most unique guns in the game. It has the highest rate of fire out of all of the assault rifles in the game. It does have some pretty crap handling. Like it shoots really fast, it's hard to control. And then the exotic talent will reduce your damage whenever you include accuracy and stability mods to the weapon. You can keep an eye on this bonus by going over to your character screen. If you head down to weapons, you'll see this all damage bonus type here. Here it is. So you can keep an eye on this bonus by coming to this menu here. And it doesn't work like a 1-to-1 ratio like you would expect it to. For example, let's say if I throw on something with accuracy, so this is 17% accuracy, we'll see that it came down to 13.5. So it's not like the overall percentage of the accuracy mod is what you like would lose out on instantly. I think it just goes by per mod. Maybe it's like 2.5% per mod slot. Not entirely sure how that works, but that's where you can keep an eye on it. I do believe this is an additive damage bonus, so it pairs well with multiplicative ones, again, like responsive, unforgiving, destructive, ferocious, stuff like that. I think that the Bullfrog is a pretty solid gun. It has really good damage output for a really high RPM. It's 50 higher RPM than the lightweight M4. And I think it might be around the same damage. I'm not 100% sure. I can leave a note on screen with like what the stats are compared to the lightweight M4. But I actually think that the Bullfrog is really decent, especially with Striker, where stability comes with the set. You can also roll stability onto the backpack and you'll ignore the weapon talent requirement. So yeah, I would use these if you have them for both PvE or PvP. Now let's go ahead and talk about the Liberator and the set talent with the Centurion. Both of these guns are available from the special equipment vendor inside the terminal and inside Camp Clinton. You also have a chance to get them inside the superior global event caches. This is another set bonus. It does require both the Centurion and the Liberator to be equipped together. In order to unlock the Free Republic exotic talent, each shot with the Liberator grants 5% to your next headshot damage with the Centurion. Max is 200%. Kills with the Centurion grants 10% RPM to all weapons for 10 seconds. This bonus is way too difficult to maintain. I guess you can mess around with it like in the open world, like if you're doing open world bosses or something. Another thing to note is that the Liberator is actually a reskinned police M4, not a lightweight M4. If you can get past the handling portion, it does have the exact same stats as a lightweight M4, so it has the same damage and RPM. You can, as long as you can maintain the handling on it. But the actual exotic talent itself, not very useful. I would say to scrap these, like if you ever do get them, and I would only buy them for the exotic commendations that you need. Otherwise, I wouldn't just come and like buy these unless you really needed something and it has good talents to choose from. Sometimes I'll recommend the Liberator because it'll have like good PvP talents or something and some PvE talents every now and again. But I can't say I would ever recommend like buying the Centurion and pairing them together. Next one is the Warlord. The only time where I've really seen the Warlord is useful is if you're running Nomad, like PvP and Nomad. The exotic talent is called Play Rough, and your damage is reduced by 20% while you're firing, and then that taken damage is applied when you stop firing. So this is pretty good for face tanking other players with Nomad. You'll be able to mitigate that damage for as long as possible while you're face trading. Usually the good talents to go for is like self-preserved and like sustained or predatory or something. And you can go for like a 10k stamina nomad just to be a troll. I have seen some players ask if they should use this like on Predator, because it is an exotic classic AK, so it is going to have really high base damage, and this is actually like the hardest hitting, I think, automatic assault rifle in the game. Does have a higher base damage than all of the other AKs in the game, so you could use it for that if you wanted to. I just think that you would do more damage with a different AK that has a free talent on the bottom slot, so you could use like Destructive or Ferocious there instead of Play Rough. I think you would do more damage, and I would really only use it for Nomad, or I guess you could use it for Predator if you want to. Alright, the next one is the Caduceus. This basically heals you and your team for 1% of your skill power whenever you land a critical hit. It's paired really well with like Reclaimer or a Tactician support build whenever you can run a Pulse, because if you have high electronics with a Pulse, you're basically going to be critting every single shot. I would definitely keep them for your healer builds if that's a build that you enjoy, but if you don't see yourself playing any kind of support build, then I would just trash these right away. All right, next we'll cover marksman rifles. We'll start off here with the Historian. This is also available for sale at the vendor. This one's pretty simple to explain. Basically, every bullet that you land on an enemy is going to embed that bullet. The bullet is going to detonate 1 second later for 700% of your firearms total. This sounds confusing, but all it is your firearms stat total. So for example, mine is 9,200 multiplied by 7. And so that means that I would be doing around 64,000 damage. And this is not affected by damage to elites or, headshot damage or critical hit damage, anything like that. You can't crit with this. It's just a base amplified or multiplication of your main firearm stat. So for example, if you had 10,000 firearms, the extra bullet would do 70,000 damage. Pretty self-explanatory. The only way that I find this gun remotely fun is with Deadeye, and even then I wouldn't use it in PvE. I think in PvP, Deadeye is where it shines the most. You'll want to go for talents like Prepared, Deadly, Capable. I do recommend them when they are for sale in case you are working on a Deadeye build, because it is really fun to use with PvP Deadeye. People kind of scramble around and you can manage to do some pretty crazy damage with it in PvP, like in Last Stand and stuff. Otherwise, I don't think that it's necessarily worth your time. The next ones that I will talk about are also a set bonus talent, but I actually think this one's actually pretty decent. So this is the Heal and the Devil. When you pair them together, it becomes the Devil's Heal. What I like so much about these guns is that they have their own individual exotic talents, and then when equipped together, they basically come together and all of the talents are on both guns. So I think that it's pretty unique, and I actually think that they're pretty decent with Sentry. I'm trying to make them work right now with Deadeye, but they do have some pretty bad handling. The bloom on them is pretty insane. You'll have to stack all accuracy and stability mods in order to get some benefit from them. But if you can reach that point, they are really fun to use. I think that people usually rank them a lot lower than they deserve credit for. I think that they're pretty fun to play with. I think that they're worth keeping to hold on to for those builds if those builds sound like they are your preference. But if it doesn't sound like you, then I would just scrap them. The last one is the Tenebrae. The Tenebrae, it's not worth keeping. I'll keep it short. Destroying an enemy weak point resets skill cooldowns for you and your nearby group members. It can happen once every 10 seconds. I think 10 seconds is too long for what the gun is. If it was on a bolt action, it would definitely be far more worth it, but since it's on a semi-auto like MK17, it's hard to get the weak point eliminations. And I think that it should have been like at least a portion of your signature skill as well, and then I would have considered putting it higher. Otherwise, it's not worth using. I would just scrap it. All right, next we will talk about the shotguns, and these ones should be pretty straightforward. So we'll start off with the Cassidy. These are also available at the vendor where you can just buy some of the exotics. And this one basically just double fires the trigger. So both of the shells are fired not at once, but like in really quick succession. This is actually really strong with Lone Star, but I would only use it like, I guess you could run it like in open world stuff. But this is really fun with PvP Lone Star. So if you have like some really good talents, like I'll usually recommend them on the vendor reset if it has Deadly, Responsive, or Unforgiving. Those are like the talents that you'll want to go for. Other than that, this one is usually an instant scrap. There's really no other reason to use these ones, although they look really, really cool. The next one is the Showstopper. Showstopper is it's pretty high up there with like some of the best exotics in the game. And basically the accuracy with the Showstopper increases whenever you have fewer shells left in the magazine. So this does make the reticle extremely small whenever you have like a few shells left. It will allow you to land some pretty far shots with it and keep your striker stacks up. This is like the best way to get stacks with striker. And the gun is like really unique. It's like the only gun in the game of its kind. I like to recommend that you keep ones that are like responsive, unforgiving, deadly, unforgiving, whatever for PvP. And then you can keep some that have like destructive and predatory for PvE. You can use it for PvE, but I really wouldn't recommend bringing it into like legendary missions or incursions. Probably only like open world or challenging difficulty content. I think all we have left is the Medved and then the Defiler. Defiler is pretty simple. The only way you can get this is by doing the pre-order. So if you buy the definitive edition, you should get this. I think it might come with the season pass or something. It's useless. It caps at level 5. No exotic talent. It comes like pre-equipped with Determined, so you could keep it just because it looks pretty cool. I mean, it's basically a mini Cassidy. It like looks exactly the same. It's just sawed off. It looks pretty cool, but it caps at level 5, so that kind of sucks. Medved, also unfortunately a bit useless. There are some commendations that are worth using it for, like especially during the global events, you have to get headshots with a shotgun. This is usually a pretty good one to use it with because it's a slug shotgun, so the shell that you land on the head will count for a headshot instead of like if you happen to use something else like a showstopper, some of those shells might hit the torso and kill him that way. So the Medved is usually pretty good for that. I would say scrap this after you're done playing with it because there's no real use for it outside of maybe the global event headshots. All right, we're going to cover the LMGs. There's only 3 LMGs that are exotics in the game, so this should be pretty quick. First, covering the Pecan. This is again one of the ones that you can buy from the vendor. This one is pretty straightforward. Every kill that you get, the next reload will have 20% extra bullets compared to its base. I would never recommend buying this. I really wouldn't recommend using it. It does not synergize with Lone Star, so if you swap magazines, it completely wipes out the talent and it's not useful. And that's really the only time I would recommend using LMGs is if you are using Lone Star. So yeah, I would not recommend this at all. Not worth your money. If you do get it, I would say to scrap it. The next one is the Hungry Hog. Hungry Hog is a bit of a niche gun, honestly. I can see the appeal of it, and it's probably one of the best looking exotics in my opinion. It has like some really neat like features that some people don't even see unless they visualize the gun. If you turn over here, you can see it says the pig in quotations. It's one of like the coolest looking guns, and I just think that the talent is really underwhelming for it, especially once you get into like the higher difficulty stuff like legendaries, incursions, or resistance, stuff like that. But basically every time you kill a target, it increases your damage dealt by 10% until you stop firing, and then it can stack up to 50% overall. It's just when you stop firing and like you do have a large magazine, you have 100% base, and you'll go up to even more with that if you have an extended magazine, and maybe even more if you have Lone Star. But the rate of fire on it is just really low. Damage I don't think is high enough in like the later stages of the game, but it's also a pretty like newer player friendly weapon. The talent is pretty decent, and I think the gun looks cool. So I would say it's worth using like early on when you don't have anything else, but once you start getting like some better guns, like the next exotic LMG we're going to look at, then you can start scrapping the Hungry Hog. And the next one is the Big Al. Big Al is up there amongst some of the better exotics, but really only for Lone Star. There's really no other reason you would use the Big Al. You could maybe use it for like Tactician because the talent is called Cover Shooter. And basically it increases your weapon damage up to 50% whenever you cover, or whenever you land hits from cover. It lasts for 10 seconds, and if you get a kill, it will reset the duration. So the bonus is also canceled whenever you reload, swap weapons, or exit combat. For this reason, if you are using the Big Al, normally for Lone Star, I recommend heavy mag springs for higher rate of fire. But for the Big Al's purpose, I would say to just go ahead and run extended magazines because the magazine size is pretty low for the highest rate of fire LMG in the game. So I would say to run extended mags on the Big Al, but if you're running different LMGs, like high-end LMGs, to run the heavy mag springs. But the Big Al is a lot of fun to play with Lone Star. I would say to definitely keep them. And you can keep like different variations of them until you feel like you have enough stockpiled, and then you can start sifting through them. But you'll want to go for talents like Accurate. Brutal is really good. Deadly is good. If you are going for a skill build version, you'll want Talented and Competent on the top. Unless it's a lower gear score, then you can go for like Ferocious and Destructive if you want to. Prepared is also a really good talent, especially if you are using this for the end of General Assembly when you're going against Bliss's helicopter. Prepared is very, very good for this. I think both of mine for that is Prepared and Accurate. Just really good talents to throw on anyway. But yeah, Big Al, definitely a lot of fun. Would highly recommend using it. All right. We are going over the last of the guns now. So we're going into sidearms and then we'll start covering the gear. So we're going to start off with the Centurion. This was part of that set bonus that I mentioned earlier with the Liberator. So the opinion is exactly the same. I just think that there's absolutely no reason to buy the Centurion unless you're doing the exotics that you need for the commendation. After that, I don't see any reason to do this. Maybe if you're bored, I guess you could buy it and use this for like open world, like clearing out your bosses and stuff. But the talent, I don't recommend it. If you happen to get these from superiors, I would just scrap them. The next sidearm is the Golden Rhino. Golden Rhino increases stagger by 200%. This is useless. Shotguns have like 400, so that's an instant trash for me. And Damascus is also an instant trash for me. This has the quick draw talent. When you draw the weapon, your damage is increased by 20% for 2 whole seconds, and after that, your weapon is decreased by 20. So not useful. Instant trash for me pretty much every time. You can like infinitely craft these for 1 division tech each because they don't cost division tech to craft. Pretty sure you get this at the end of the story. And as you can see, it doesn't cost division tech to make. So if you buy them or if you craft them using tools and weapon parts, you can deconstruct it for division tech. You get 1 division tech back from it, and sometimes you'll get weapon parts, or you might get the weapon parts back every time. I'm not sure. All right, so now we're getting into gear. Just to make it easy, I went ahead and equipped all of the gear. You do actually have a commendation to equip all exotic gear, and I think that's what actually gives you the shady mask. So once you get that, then you can start looking into like what gear set or what gear pieces, exotic gear pieces you want to get rid of. In my opinion, there's only 2, maybe like 3, maybe 4 that are actually worth it. Let's go over the instant scrap ones now. Bliss holster is an instant scrap. This one used to be kind of decent. It would be better if the 20th, or rather the 10th shot, I mean, didn't consume your stacks. If it would have kept your stacks for at least like a 10-second period, it would have been better. Used to use this a little bit back in the day with hybrid builds, like in 1.7. Definitely don't use it anymore, especially on PC. You might be able to pull it off on console, but I just don't think it's worth it. I'm trying to think of anywhere where the EMP effect might be, I guess maybe against a hunter. Maybe. Yeah, I don't think it's worth using. I would just scrap this right away. There's also a bug with it. Not sure if it still happens. I'm pretty sure it does, but sometimes your pistol will be facing outwards instead of down. So it looks kind of funny. But yeah, that's an instant scrap. Short bow knee pads are also pretty much an instant scrap for me. They are useful like for PvP. They're also useful whenever you need any grenade commendations done. Sometimes like some of the global events have some, or there might be a base game one, I'm not sure. But really good for that because it basically reduces your grenade fuse to 0. So like as soon as it hits the ground, it'll go off. It's funny for PvP stuff, but not actually useful. I would just scrap them immediately. I keep this 1 pair on me just in case I happen to want to use it, but I haven't even touched it yet, as you can see, and the stats are really bad. So I probably won't be using it. Getting into like the sometimes useful, Pharaoh's Mask, the user will run and you can run and shoot your gun while burning. So this can be useful in the dark zone against flame turrets. It can be useful for the contamination events inside the dark zone where you're on fire by cleaners. This is really useful. I actually hold on to it only for the reason to use it in Dragon's Nest for some of the commendations where you can't use like healing skills during global events. Stuff like that, it can be very useful. I think I do have a build video put together for whatever global event that is. I can't remember off the top of my head which one it is, but you do have to do Dragon's Nest without using any kind of healing skills. It is useful to throw this on with like a bunch of exotic damage resilience because you'll be able to shoot your gun and everything and be able to tank some of that damage as well as shooting. And then the next one that's a bit mid are the Skull MC gloves. These ones increase your damage by 16%. This is an additive increase when no set bonuses are active. This means that you can't run any other sets. This also means weapon sets, so you can't run the Hilder in the air, the Liberator and the Centurion, Devil and Heal. You can't run any gear set bonuses. You can basically only run high-end pieces, or you can run individual gear set pieces. So I could run like 1 Lone Star, 1 Deadeye, 1 Predator, etc. I would just recommend using high-ends for this. You can definitely use something like this when you're starting out. The talent on these gloves is fair. I just think that classified 6 pieces like overruns it completely. But if you don't have those, obviously, right now, it would be a good time to use these in the meantime. The next one is the Ninja Bike. Ninja Bike is actually a really decent one. It basically acts as a puzzle piece. So let's say I have 2 pieces of Final Measure. and I equip this backpack, it actually gives me 3. So it allows me to unlock like 4-piece bonuses and 3-piece, like anywhere between 2 to 4-piece bonuses. It allows me to unlock them for 1 less gear set piece. So it's really good for hybrids. You cannot unlock classified bonuses with this. So you can't unlock 5, 6-piece bonuses with the backpack. You have to have only up to 4. So that gets a lot of people. They think they can do that, but you can't do it. This is like the best exotic you can get early game. Like if you get this right away, like as you just hit level 30, you go out and you take out your open world bosses. If this is the first exotic you get, you're golden. Throw together like a 4-piece striker with 2-piece nomad, and then you're set with like really good sustainability and damage until you can get some classified pieces under your belt. I also have a few other builds on my channel that I've made with the ninja bike, and I need to make more. I do definitely need to make more build videos. But in the meantime, I would go and check those out. I'll leave that linked in the description. And then finally, the best exotic gear item I would say is the Barrett's chest piece. I like to use Barrett's on either Deadeye builds as like a 5-piece Deadeye with Barrett's. I also like to use it. You can use it with like 5-piece Alpha Bridge in PvP, 5-piece Banshee in PvP. You can use it with, what I like to use it with the most are Tactician builds, because both this 10% skill power increase and 5% damage increase apply to your skills together. So my first skill that I send off will have that 10% more, and then the second one I send off will have 5% more damage output. So really good chest piece to use. Overall very versatile. The armor increase isn't too massive, but it's better than nothing at all. So this is one of those exotics that you can slap onto like any build, and it's going to provide you at least some benefit. So I do think that it's worth using and it's worth keeping. All right, guys, this is me and the JTF officers letting you know that that is all of the exotics in the game. As you kind of could tell, it's more of like a your opinion kind of a thing. Like it really depends on the builds that you enjoy running. Some of the exotics are better for skill builds than others. Some of them are better for damage builds. Some of them are better for support. Let me know like what your favorite exotic is in the game and like why you keep it versus others. If you have like a different opinion than me, let me know. I'm definitely curious. Thank you guys for watching and for being patient for the upload. I will talk to you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day.